How do you become fearless?
How do you become fearless? Well, first of all, you have to learn to deal with your fear, which is a hard one for a lot of people to swallow. There was a lady who came here, I think, for a week program, and she was very afraid of dogs, especially small dogs. Well, we have 8 Chihuahuas, so that's quite a challenge for her. And we did ceremonies with her and therapies and everything to try and bring back as much balance in the system as possible. And then the last day I said, I have a surprise for you. And then she said, what is it? I said, well, in the ceremony, ayahuasca showed me that you want to become a healer. She said, yes, that's true. I said, well, we all have the capacity to become healers. Do you believe that? She said, yeah, well, blah, blah. I said, well, I already knew you were going to give that answer. She said, why? I said, because in the ceremony I also saw that you're afraid to admit what you truly desire inside. And she said, yeah, I just don't think I'm capable, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the first teaching I'm going to give you. You have to scrap that word. I can't. I'm not capable. It doesn't exist in your how do you say?
Vocabulary.
Vocabulary, yeah. I mean, it doesn't exist in mine. So I told her it shouldn't exist in yours either. And then she said, okay, I'll admit, I do want to become a healer. I do feel like we can all do it, and I do feel like I have that fire and that drive inside of me. I said, would you like to learn? She said, yes, I don't know if now is the right moment, but I do feel like I'm in the phase of shifting in my life where I'm opening up to these possibilities. I said, well, if you want, I can give you your first lesson. She said, okay, what is it? I said, in a way, in our lives, we're all healers because we're always looking for ways to improve ourselves. At least that's most of us. And the first step in entering healing with an open heart is being okay with being afraid. And not judging the fear as good or bad. Fear is just fear, Just watch it, just observe it, but learn to breathe through it. Learn to become it without, believing you're going to die. Because you won't. In fact, you will never feel as alive as when you're truly afraid. Because the adrenaline is rushing and your mind is racing and your heart is beating and your lungs are opening and everything is going wow. And if you can embrace the fear and stay with it, you'll notice that after that rush and feeling crazy alive, there's a peace and presence that kind of creeps in and tells you, you did it. You're okay. So obviously she looked at me with big eyes and went like, okay, I'm kind of afraid what he's going to propose to me right now. So I took her out the back and I said, sit down. And I went to get one of the Chihuahuas. The moment she saw the dog, she started screaming and crying. So I turned around with the dog and I looked back and I said, okay, we're going to do this again. I just want you to breathe, focus on your breathing, and with every breath you're going to tell yourself, I am okay. It doesn't matter what your head says to you, you're going to sit in your body and just accept the fact that you're feeling afraid and overwhelmed. You're not going to fight it. So I turned around again, immediately the whole rush, and she started, okay, I'm okay. Okay. I said, great, you're doing a great job. She said, but don't bring the dog. I said, I'm not bringing the dog. I'm just reminding you, just breathe and think about your mantra. I am okay. Stay in the body. And after, I think, 30 seconds, I put the dog away and I just let her settle. And then she, at some point, said, that was crazy. Because at some point, there was a switch in me where I could accept the fact that I was really afraid and I thought I was going to die. And I was able to tell myself that if I die, it's okay. And when she said that, tears of emotion came out that were totally different than fear. And she couldn't put her finger on it of what emotion it was. But what she knew for sure is that it was a release. Because as she started crying, there was an electric impulse that went all through her feet and hands. I said, oh, that sounds great. Shall we get the dog again? And then she herself proposed yes. And maybe you can sit down in front of me with the dog. Up until the moment where, we did it the third time and she came to sit next to me. So I think facing your fears ecstatically enough, and sadly enough, you have to face them head on. If you want, I can give you another story as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So I remember when I met my teacher, and he told me that I had to do, this work, and I think the first thing I had was fear, because my experience was so intense. It was beautiful, but in a way, it felt very chaotic, because I had no idea what was happening. I had no, previous information. Because today you can just go on the internet and look up plant medicine ceremonies and traditional healing, blah blah. You get like so much info. I knew nothing about these things when I went in. So for me, it was really like my mind was suddenly being stretched, because I literally didn't know what to expect. So that caused my first experience to be a little bit traumatic. Because usually, when you go to a ceremony, many people tell you like, okay, my tips for you are surrender, don't fight, don't try to control, be open, no expectations. Well, I went in with crazy expectations, no control, and definitely not wanting to surrender, wanting to fight with everything that was happening. So when I came out of that and he told me like, you have to do this job, I was like, fuck no, are you crazy? I'm never doing this again. This was as huge of a trauma. I mean, it was a beautiful trauma, but it was a trauma. And then he said, no, you're going to do it again and you're going to drink alone. And I just thought to myself, this guy is crazy. He is out of his mind. And it took quite a while for me to really settle my mind into the fact like, okay, I'm going to eventually go into this and do and try it alone. And, just like with the lady, with the chihuahuas, I had to go through the same thing. No matter what I was seeing, no matter what I was feeling, that I was just saying, I surrender. I'm not controlling. I trust the universe. I trust myself. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. So that you give no space for any doubt or any negative thought to come across your mind. Yeah. And yeah, if you just do that often enough, you're going to transform your fears into your greatest power. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what was the other thing? Because you said that there were two things.
Yeah.
So first off, it's the triggers. Face them. What's the other part?
The other part is, I would say, shifting from a victim mentality to what you could say, a hero mentality. And I know many people will immediately go like, oh, but I never played a victim. And this is a tricky one. We have a tendency to wear masks and be in a defensive state of this person did this to me in such a way that we don't even realize. I know a lot of men who will say, oh, I never played a victim. But then when you start talking about their ex, the first thing they say, she was a bitch and she did me dirty. And so you're in a victim role. Because if you can't look back on that relationship in peace, no matter what happened, and take accountability for the fact that you attracted that partner into your life. It was you that had to learn a lesson there about boundaries and respect and self-worth. If you can do that, then you're in the hero's shoes. You're taking full accountability and responsibility for everything that's happened in your life. And funny enough, if you can do that, your life flows. It's the people who are in this victim mentality of, this has been done unto me, that are experiencing the stagnation in life. I think that's the beauty about plant medicine. It opens you up and it brings you on a higher realm, a bigger perception, where you suddenly have the chance to view things outside of yourself, where you get to see like, hey, why am I viewing this in a certain way if it's keeping me captive? Hey! So, and that is closely related to the watching your triggers as well, because your triggers always tell you where you're still wearing that victim coat. Because if you're always in a state of responsibility, then you become way less triggered. When you meet someone and the person is acting ugly to you, you don't get triggered because I am in a conversation with this person, why did my energy resonate with this person to bring it on my path today? So immediately I go inside and I see, okay, actually I have been dealing with some things, maybe some chapters or emotion that I still haven't closed off, and I recognize them in this person. So it's the universe telling me, hey, that's something I still have to work on. And it gave me a mirror so I could see it. But if I'm wearing, a victim coding, even if it's unconscious, even if I don't know it, immediately when the person gives me shitty behavior, I'm going to go like, this person is such a fucking bitch. And we all do that, right? We all have these moments, and some people have it a lot, do it all the time. Some people, they catch themselves every now and then. But that's the art. Watching your triggers and then bringing them back to your fear. And how can I step away from this victim mentality and come back to the accountability part so I can take ownership of my life. Yeah. And this is very easy, right? Because you don't need a coach for this. You don't need a mentor for this. I mean, when you get triggered, no one has to tell you it's a trigger. The moment you can't think rationally, your voice go up and you feel like you have to defend yourself. Oh, you're triggered. Sit the fuck down. Close your eyes. Be quiet. Go inside. What do you have to see here? And at some point it turns into a game with yourself. At least I have that now. Where something triggers me and then in the moment I can get heated, but then afterwards I laugh about myself. And I think, I slipped again. Next time I'm gonna do it better. Next time when something happens and I'm triggered, I'm just gonna breathe. I'm gonna be quiet, and I'm not gonna observe the person. I'm gonna observe myself. Because usually when we get triggered, what we do is immediately we start observing the person to see what is flawed and wrong with the person. Why are you triggering me? But when I'm playing this game of growth, of self-reflection, I don't want to do that. Next time when it's happened, I'm gonna go like, okay, I'm gonna listen to what you're saying, but I'm not gonna give a response. I'm just purely gonna view how is my body responding to what you're saying. Even if my body thinks he's a fucking asshole, I'm gonna tell my body, you might be right. You might be a fucking asshole. But why do I have to respond in such a way that it triggers me? Why can I not be okay with the fact that he is an asshole? I'm not an asshole. He is. So why is it my problem? This can take a long time to master.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay.